Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. We are continuing our Studio Etiquette series with a discussion of befriending your piercer. And everyone, please pardon my voice this video. I am getting over a little bit of a head cold. Thankfully not COVID, but my throat has been wrecked for the past week and a half. But I really want to get a jump and finish all of my March filming, so enjoy my nasally sick voice for this video and possibly a few others. When I started this Studio Etiquette series, I was really excited by all of the different questions I got from folks who messaged me or emailed me with subjects for me to talk about in this. And one of the ones that I got the most sort of like comments or questions about was, I think my piercer is really cool. We get along well every time I'm in there. I kind of want to take the next step and see about like becoming friends with them outside of the studio. What do you suggest for that? How do I go about doing it? I don't want to be rude or disrespectful. Like, can you give me your advice? So today we're going to jump into a little bit of that. And I'm going to start kind of just by ripping the Band-Aid off, which is to say 90% of the time your piercer, or honestly your tattoo artist, does not want to be your friend outside of the studio. I know Listen, it's not that we don't like you, it's not that we don't enjoy you, it's not that we don't enjoy spending time with you, but for a lot of us there is a big professional boundary there that we are very, very hesitant to violate or cross. There is a level of like power dynamic and power exchange in that we provide these services, we work intimately with people's bodies. Most piercers and tattoo artists are pretty aware of this, and we never want to use the power that we have in that power dynamic to violate people's boundaries or people's consent, or end up pursuing a relationship or a friendship with someone that is sort of founded on this unequal power exchange that we have in the piercing room. It's the reason why like teachers shouldn't date students, doctors shouldn't date patients, therapists shouldn't date patients, piercers and tattoo artists also shouldn't date patients. And that can also kind of extend to like friendships and other forms of like close relationship as well. The other is that most of us have been burned by someone who was a friend and also a client. More often it starts with people who were originally friends and then became clients, but it can happen the other way too, where people think that just because you're friendly or you're close, they're suddenly entitled to free piercings or free jewelry or discounts, or they're weird about stuff, or if something is difficult in the work relationship, piercing is having a problem healing, a piece of jewelry broke, it then like sours the friendship. Or vice versa. If there's like drama in the friendship, now stuff at the studio is weird. And it can be a really, really uncomfortable situation. And I also know for a lot of piercers, who they are in the piercing room is not the same as who they are in their private personal life and outside of the studio. And blurring that line and that boundary can be really uncomfortable for a lot of people. So the vast majority of the time, I would say most folks would rather keep it professional. Now that being said, I still have some people who I consider incredible, amazing friends who started out as clients. So it's not that this thing can never happen. It's not that it's impossible to happen. It's just that in the majority of circumstances, most folks would rather have it stay a professional relationship. And in getting ready to do this video, I reached out not just to other piercers, but to hairstylists and nail techs that I know, and got the same response. Like, every now and again, you meet the perfect client who is also a really great friend, and it just becomes this magical friendship. But for the majority, most folks in the service industry seem to prefer to keep that professional boundary. Now, like I said, every now and again it does happen. And whenever people ask me this question, I actually think of my incredibly dear friend Danielle. She started out as a regular at the studio that I used to work at in Florida. She was actually a regular there for like 6 or 7 years before I even started working there. And then I moved down there and started working there, and we like immediately hit it off. Like our very first interaction, she came in to pick out jewelry. I wasn't even a piercer at the time. I was like barely an apprentice. And we both settled on this, like, I think it was like a cool turquoise piece, or it was something from BVLA with a pink faceted stone in it. It was one of the two. I know it I know it was one of those two with 100% certainty. I just don't remember which. And we like both gushed over it in the case, and like we're just immediately like jewelry nerds together. And it was all over from there. Every single time she came in on the days that I worked. I was always the person who helped her and picked out her jewelry. I was always excited to see her. We like started off being nerdy about stones, and like she made beautiful bracelets and collected stones and like geodes at home. So she would like bring in, like show me pictures of new stones that she brought and bring in like bracelets and beads for me to see. I would tell her about like new pieces we got in or show her new plugs that I was buying. Just immediately. Fast forward like 2 or 3 years of working together, and like somehow like books and things that we like to read came up in conversation, and it turns out we were both readers. So we started talking about that occasionally when she would come in, and just so many different things, until there was just a spate of time that was pretty rough in the world, in my personal life. Some very tragic events happened in our community in South Florida, and most of us were having a really difficult time with it. And she was like, hey, you know, I don't want to overstep. I don't want to be too personal. So absolutely no offense if you're not interested. But, you know, I do yoga, and I know you felt really stressed lately. I can bring a friend to some of my classes. Would you want to come to a yoga class with me? I have a mat that you can borrow, just to sort of like get out some of this grief and some of these emotions you're having. And I was like, honestly, like that sounds great. That sounds like what I need. And so I went with Danielle to this yoga class, and that I think just sort of sealed our friendship. And after that, we started texting and communicating more outside of the studio, and starting to like hang out outside of the studio, get food, all this stuff. And it just sort of progressed into a friendship from there. And to this day, Danielle is one of my dearest friends. We text like every single week. Even though I don't live in Florida anymore, we still talk all the time. We are always recommending books to each other. Just started reading some Brandon Sanderson, thanks to my recommendations. And I've been watching through one of her favorite TV shows, The Magicians, recently. And I just love her with all of my heart. And I couldn't imagine a life without her in it as a dear and cherished friend. And that relationship did start out as a client relationship. And even with it starting out as a client relationship, it's still a friendship that I cherish and just hold so near and dear to my heart. But I think my relationship with Danielle is sort of a perfect example of that, like 10% of cases where this can actually work out really well. It happened very naturally. It started off with her coming in as a client and us having purely professional work-related conversations. And then over an extended period of time, we found more and more things that we connected on. We connected on books and movies and yoga and gems, and just so much in our life. We had these like connections that felt really comfortable. You know, we sent occasionally like memes, or not necessarily like piercing related things back and forth on Instagram, but still like gemstones or jewelry. And there were interactions that showed that there was like a connection there, or we kind of got along on the same wavelength. And we had those connections sometimes in the studio as well. It was easy sometimes for me to spend an extra 20, 30 minutes on a slow shift, just sort of chit-chatting with Danielle when she came through the studio to hang out, which is something that I didn't always do with the vast majority of other clients. And honestly couldn't do these days with how high volume the studio is. And then when she first reached out, she saw that I was in not such a great place, kind of in a place of need, and sort of like extended that olive branch, but in a very polite way, where she was like, I don't want to cross any boundaries. I would love if you wanted to come to this thing, but if you don't, no pressure. Like, I just wanted to extend the offer. And because I care about you, you know, I'm worried. I see you're dealing with this stuff. We're all kind of dealing with this stuff right now. And I think it might be something that's helpful. And she was very respectful about the whole thing with it. And not only that, once we did sort of shift into a friendship, she didn't expect things. Like, she wouldn't come into the studio and be like, oh, you're not gonna like give me a discount because we're friends. I'll be honest, like most studios do friends and family discounts. If my like partner or significant other or my coworker's mom comes in, we give them a discount because they're related to people here. But people who start off as clients, a lot of times, unfortunately, they try and befriend tattoo artists and piercers because they're trying to get a discount. And I've seen this so many times. I've never, I think, seen a grown man more heartbroken than one of the tattoo artists at one of my last studios who had become really good friends with someone who had started out as a client, and they connected on all of the same nerdy things. They started playing D&D together and going to magic tournaments, and they became like basically almost best friends. And then the dude came in for another session working on a full sleeve, did like a 2-day back-to-back session, like $1,000 worth of tattooing basically. My coworker still gave him like a bit of a discount because he was a friend, and the dude was like, I just thought I wouldn't pay for tattoos anymore now that we're like friends and we hang out. And my coworker was like, no, this was 2 days worth of work. Like, I still have to like feed my wife and child and pay my bills. He was like, oh, well then what the fuck? And ended their friendship and left and went somewhere else to finish his sleeve because my old coworker wouldn't tattoo him for free. And I've never seen a grown man so upset than when that happened. And it happens a lot. It happens a lot that people try and befriend us to take advantage of services. And from folks I spoke to, it happens a lot in hair and nails as well. So the other thing that I loved about Danielle is even when she would come in and I would be like, oh, you know, I'm going to put the friend discount on this. She would be like, no, I am a customer still. Like, I don't want this to change things. Like, I still want to pay for your time or your services and your things like this. Like, I'm not doing this. I'm not your friend because I'm trying to get cheap piercings and cheap jewelry. I'm your friend because we like the same books and because we laugh at each other's jokes and because we get each other's weird food preferences and like because we love each other as people. So that's a big part of it, is like not coming into it entitled or expecting things, but also just sort of letting things naturally take their course, letting that connection build up over time. And if you really feel like there is that connection there and you feel like you want to take that next step, a very low pressure offer of like, hey, I don't want to cross any boundaries. I totally understand if the answer is no, but would you be interested in going and grabbing a coffee sometime, in going and checking out this like thing at a local museum or this event or this concert or coming to a yoga class? Totally understand if the answer is no, just sort of like wanting to put that out there. And I think the big thing is, if the answer is no, don't make it weird, don't make it uncomfortable, don't make it awkward. It is probably nothing personal. It is probably just a piercer or tattoo artist or service provider sort of protecting their boundaries and keeping their safe space. And for what it's worth, because at least for me, I can't speak to everyone, but at least for me, because I am so aware of the power dynamic that goes into these situations, and I'm so hyper aware of how often the opposite happens, where tattoo artists and piercers manipulate that place of power and then take advantage of clients. And the opposite, where clients manipulate service providers to take advantage or get discounted services. I have really big walls and a really big boundary when it comes to making these outside of work connections. I personally think it would like basically never be appropriate to date or be in a romantic relationship with a client. And I have super strict boundaries surrounding that. It would take like, I know it happens sometimes, but it would take the most incredible human being for me to ever cross that boundary. But because of that, that sort of spills over into friendships as well. So I am like, guard up. It's kind of hard for me to want to cross that line with someone who I feel like is a client. And again, not that it's impossible. I love Danielle to pieces. And I have many other clients who started off as clients and have become precious and cherished friends, but it's hard. It's definitely hard. And it comes from a place of wanting to protect myself, of wanting to protect my studio and the best interests of the studio, and also wanting to protect my clients and to be able to maintain safe, healthy, professional relationships. So again, I think probably 90% of the time, we love seeing our regular clients and our clients who we do have a bit of a connection with in the studio, but in a professional sense. Nothing personal, just we like keeping things professional. But I would say there are those occasions where the personalities just line up so well, where the people do line up so well that it sort of naturally flows into this friendship, and it's wonderful. And if that is the case and it happens, amazing. But I wouldn't push too hard. I wouldn't be demanding or have expectations around it. And I would just sort of let it be a thing if that happens. And if it doesn't, that's completely okay too. But as far as studio etiquette goes, respect service providers' boundaries around having relationships or interactions or communications outside the studio, and understand that a lot of professionals want to keep things professional to keep themselves safe, their business safe, and you safe. It's not a personal thing, it's just part of having healthy boundaries and making sure that everything goes smoothly across the board. All right, folks, thanks so much for hanging out and chatting, and I can't wait to sit down and talk with you again next week. Bye.